Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Danae, and I'm here with a message for you. What's up, y'all? Happy Saturday. It's May 9th, 2026. Just coming to do quick little weekend check-in. I'll say this now in case I forget later. Happy Mother's Day in advance. Happy Mother's Day weekend to all the mamas out there. I hope that you enjoy your weekend as a mother or with a mother that you cherish. I hope it's a great celebration. Yeah, I'm using the Dollface deck by the Ghetto Nun today. I just felt like, I wanted to get as close to some feminine vibes as I possibly could. And in true form, I saw the Empress card pop up quite a bit through my pre-shuffling, and the High Priestess a few times as well, but specifically, particularly, pardon me, the Empress, which is, clearly right on target. So I won't necessarily project that this is going to be a divine feminine reading outright, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is, like, just specifically geared toward the feminine energy in some way, shape, or form, or about feminine energy. All right. So anyway, without further ado, let's see what time it is. It's 8:09. So let's see what we got. Four of Wands. Something about being at home, making home comfortable, taking care of home, nesting, perhaps. What else with the Four of Wands? Really just kind of, oh, not the Eight of Swords. Ooh. I feel like some people may feel almost captivated by, I would say, house arrest. Okay, that's off the top, right? But some people might literally feel like confined or stuck or captivated by their domestic obligations in some way, shape, or form. Now, I don't know where this is going, honey, because Mother's Day is supposed to be a celebratory holiday for your motherly duties, but the joys of motherhood, as my mom would say. But this isn't reading too well. But what I was going to say is just, an offering of advice, to see it in the best way possible. You got to just find the joy and your responsibilities where you can, the gratitude for what you have. Leading with the Four of Wands, that's a depiction of a legacy that is underway, and not everybody has that privilege, to physically carry a legacy and bring it to life, to literally be entrusted. And some shouldn't, actually, to that point. Some shouldn't be entrusted with motherhood and some of the ways that they exemplify their concept of it, and usually that's on account of personal experience and upbringing and so on and so forth. But to lighten it, if you're particularly someone that feels a bit overwhelmed maybe, or overrun by the obligations in your life, particularly taking care of home, family, God forbid, even single motherhood, you still have to find ways to create balance where you even if it's in the smallest things, you still have a way to take care of yourself. That means self-care. If you can't get your nails done, paint them yourself. If you can't afford to get your hair done, YouTube that shit and do it on your own. But anything, I mean, and those are like superficial ways to take care of yourself, but those are the little things that sometimes can make all the difference in you feeling taken care of versus taking care of everyone else but you. So you have to find the way to create that balance for yourself, because let's just face it, being a mom can be quite all consuming, dare I even say overwhelming at times. But as I say, you choose overwhelm. So where there is an opportunity to create relief for yourself instead of victimizing yourself, because we know the Eight of Swords generally is when you resolve to be a captive of some circumstance or situation, and even a mentality more than anything. But in actuality, you do have some power to make a change or make a difference. It's just a matter of whether or not you activate it, So if you need to make some changes at home, switch some things up. I was talking to a fellow soccer mom today that, she found herself a sitter for at least that's available without fail every Wednesday, just to kind of give herself a little breathing room to run errands without a shadow, and to just have that time to do whatever she wants to do, even if it's nothing particularly special, And sometimes as moms, we take those little moments, like we almost, defer those little moments to a spirit of unworthiness, like who am I, or more so like guilt anyway, like what they say, mom's guilt, where you don't even feel like you can justify taking a moment of rest or stepping away for a minute or getting a sitter or whatever. You feel like it all has to, it just all has to fall on you. But most times, in most cases, not all cases, some people really do have some strenuous cases, but most of the time there is an opportunity to create relief. It just may cause for you to stretch a little, get comfortable being a little bit uncomfortable with something for a minute, perhaps, or with other people, perhaps being uncomfortable, to an adjustment before it just becomes a new normal. So yeah, let's keep going though. House arrest. Ooh, child, with the Five of Wands. You can't see these cards, can you? Look, they fighting. Like I said, I don't know where this is going, because there's some old ghetto stuff. This like somebody, this is depicting like somebody that may be unfit, or that is, and if we're not talking about motherhood as in literally a mom and a child, it's just something about like to manage a great deal of responsibility. Someone may have been entrusted with a great deal, or they appointed themselves to be in charge of something that was particularly sensitive and like a vulnerable situation that they either appointed themselves or were entrusted to manage, and they didn't live up to a reasonable standard, or they're not living up to a reasonable standard, like they're falling apart in some way, shape, or form. The Five of Wands, that's competition. Could be some type of conflict, argument, or something. Maybe an actual fight as it depicts. So it could be some type of domestic violence situation that we're talking about here. God forbid somebody about to spend Mother's Day. Maybe they got locked up on Friday and they spending Mother's Day weekend in jail. So I don't know. Let's keep going. This is not what I was expecting. Leading with the Empress, but what's that? Queen of Coins. What about the Queen of Coins? Maybe somebody just doesn't have their priorities in. Well, they have their priorities, but the priority is finances or material things. And as I was going off into, yeah, because I'm getting like somebody's like cracking under some type of pressure or something. And I could say it's like the woes of motherhood or just womanhood in general. But I don't know, like it feels like it's not just a matter of, oh, momming is so hard. It's like it's given that somebody's cracking under the pressure of like the basics of domestication, like because it's infringing upon the material fulfillment that they're accustomed to, their time, their energy, maybe their sleep, their own personal pampering and self-care. And not for nothing, all the things that I said about finding a way to balance it all is giving someone maybe having an inner conflict with themselves because of the sacrifices they're finding themselves having to make or needing to make for the sake of a great responsibility. Let's just call it what it is. You can, if it's not motherhood specifically, you can round it out to something, that just takes a great deal of your undivided attention, whatever that is. It could even be a business that's like a baby, or a job, or a position, or just, a partnership, a husband, or whatever, something, or family in general, even if it's not your kids, like someone feeling like they are not they're not so willing, like they don't really find the gratitude and the sacrifices of motherhood as most at least learn to appreciate, like for what it's worth, even with the things that just come, the challenges that come with the territory. You ultimately find gratification in the job, in the position, in the ways that you can, and seeing the smile on your kid's face. You might work hard, but it feels good to be able to provide, or to be able to even spoil, and things like that. It feels good to see them thrive in the things that they want to do, or that they're good at, or trying new things, or having fresh new experiences, and so on and so forth. Even if it takes away from, like it peels the pockets back, and so on and so forth. So it's like you find a noble mom, and I'm not saying you got to be perfect or angelic or saintly or anything, but you find, even with the challenge, you usually find something good about it. Again, that's the creation of balance here. But I'm getting someone that's like they may be having some type of extended postpartum type of situation, where they are not, it's the joy is not so easily connected. They're not easily connected to the joys as much as they are the challenges, the struggles, the sacrifices, what they feel like they're missing out on, or what is taken away from that they used to be fulfilled by. But it's given to me with this Queen of Coins. It feel maybe even somebody that wants to get back to work, or just get back to business as usual, and they tired of this. Like how many more years to 18 type of energy, like f these kids type of energy. So I don't know, but let's keep going, because it's kind of funny, but it's also like, damn, This of all the messages on Mother's Day weekend, so contrary to what you would want to hear. But if this ain't you, then I guess that's the upside, that, something to be grateful for this weekend is that this is not your struggle. So there's that, I guess, on the bright side of things. I don't know. That Eight of Swords is looking crazy and creepy to me. Yeah, it's like somebody's feeling like they, it's, they're feeling. Four of Swords is not generally stuck. It's more of a surrender. But let me get another one, because I don't want to project this negativity over the whole message if that's not what it is. But let me see what's next. It's like somebody just misses the good old, this is what I'm feeling like. They miss the good old days when they could just lay around without a care in the world. No responsibility, nobody to answer to, no baby crying, come and go as you please, get up and go where you want, spend your money how you want to spend it, blow a bag whenever you feel like it. Like somebody is feeling confined, if not spiritually, mentally, or energetically. They're feeling like they're kind of like in a prison with either the newfound responsibility that they've taken on. It feels kind of new because this looks almost like a toddler, which can be, well, I haven't gotten to the teenage stage yet before I say this, but I know toddler stage where they're not quite so independent yet, but they're also not necessarily a baby. It can still kind of be a bit stressful because they're independent enough to get around and get into stuff and, have matured into their own sleep schedule, and most of the time it's super early and like very unpredictable, and they're so vulnerable and sensitive. Like you really kind of gotta dote over them 24/7. Similar to a baby, but with babies, at least most of their time is going to be sleeping, and the other side of it usually is eating if you're lucky. But that toddler stage, it's something. It is something. So it's like somebody's missing the days when they could just kind of be on their own time in their own world, pretty much, and they're just not having that now. Or maybe they are, but let's see. Or they let me just see what's next. It's kind of, honestly, and this is mostly channeling, but I'm going to continue on. It feels like I'm getting a sense of someone that never really did have the joy of motherhood. It's like they may have had a child because it was like an objective thing to do, like to have a family, to have a legacy, like you're supposed to, like they did what they were supposed to do, maybe get married or get a partner and have a baby, or the baby was actually having a child was the objective, but the consideration of all the things that come with that, the changes, the impositions at times, the demands on your life weren't really accounted for, as they mostly aren't before you get into motherhood. You never know you could never be prepared. I don't care who you are, how much money you have, how much you really, really wanted a baby, whether you're a single mom or in a committed partnership or married or whatever the case may be. You, as a woman, you can never be fully prepared for the way that motherhood completely changes your life from the moment you realize that you're having a baby until forever. pretty much, because you never really stop being a mom, most likely. Most don't. So it's like somebody that went through all the formalities of becoming a mom and does do the formalities of motherhood, but they never really found the joy in it. And that's why it's such a struggle and almost such like a prison to them. Maybe because, like I said earlier, some people don't need to have kids. They feel like they should because it's the thing to do as a woman. You know, there's some conditioning or programming that makes them feel like, well, I gotta have at least one child. But some people really aren't really cut out for it. Their lifestyles are not even so much the lifestyle, because all that can change, but again, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, a lot of people haven't even really confronted their own childhood wounds and experiences before they become mothers. And then if you're lucky, you end up working that out once you become a mom, if you're lucky, once again. But a lot of times, it's just a cycle that gets to be transitioned on and on and on of some type of unfulfillment or unrest or, unworthiness or whatever the case may be, that comes up when you're in that psychological struggle. And yeah, it's just given that maybe somebody thought that the baby would be like a fulfillment to a picture of, that picture perfect life that they had calculated, Queen of Coins, like they calculated all the variables of the equation for a perfect life. But, there were some, what do you call it, some unknowns, that just you couldn't account for until you're actually in it. And then how motherhood is, it's like I said, you have to find the joy to keep going, and not just to wake up day to day, but to actually be effective in such a prominent role in another human being's life. You have to roll with the punches of whatever life is thrown at you, which sometimes it can start as one thing, being a happy partnership where you're excited about the child you're bringing into your lives, to things falling apart unexpectedly, people going their separate ways, not being able to see eye to eye, marriages tanking on account of those early years of a baby that shakes up the whole entire world, their entire world. Realizing you had a baby with someone quite undesirable in some ways, or insufferable, and still having to put your best foot forward. So, I mean, it's miraculous work for sure. It is miraculous. It's one of the, as they say, teachers are one of the most thankless jobs. Certainly motherhood is one of the most thankless positions, because you are sometimes expected to carry the world on your shoulder and still put on a happy face to make sure the kiddos are having are living their best life. And that sometimes is easier said than done, and it's all about what you have a will and what you are devoted and committed to creating. And in that regard, some folks have that maternal instinct that almost seems natural and effortless, even when it's not. And in the worst case scenario, like I said, some folks just should have never, and God bless those seeds to be able to stop cycles and turn things around for the best of their legacy and their lineage. But some people just don't need to have no kids, period. All right, let's see. And unfortunately, in many situations, it's already too late. And this might be one of them. All right, so Four of Swords, like this person, she like daydreaming about the good old days. And then the baby starts crying. Or you get that old, Mom, can I have? Like, damn, I thought you was asleep. Three of Swords. Oh my gosh. It's getting worse. And we know traditionally what the Three of Swords is. That's the three swords through the heart. Like, it's the ugly truth that either someone doesn't want to admit to themselves or something that they would never want anybody else to know. Which we have that as that mom guilt sometimes, where you wouldn't want it to be known just how overwhelmed you are, or even like the most raw and brutal truths about how you truly feel about motherhood at times. Maybe not all the time, but at times, things that are just very real, and it doesn't make you a bad person, but it's just what it is. But the Three of Swords here is even deeper than that, because we got this obviously isn't the traditional. It's like three ladies around a damn Ouija board. I don't know what this person is what they're trying to conjure. Maybe some help, a way out. I just heard a sacrifice. I don't even like the idea of that. This is real. I don't even want to say this. I mean, I kind of have to, but this just is so dark, child. It's given like when I hear sacrifice, it's definitely given like abort mission, if you feel me. Like either someone could be contemplative, like maybe they're projecting the future and seeing it out, looking at the looking through their futuristic lens, like me, a mom, and they're considering whether or not it's in the cards for them, or whether, it's something that they truly want. And there's a consideration of either never conceiving if they can help it, or someone is actually faced with the decision to maybe have to terminate in some way, shape, or form. That's just a side note. But it's definitely, it resonates in terms of the, this real questionable energy that I'm sensing here. It's like somebody may be contemplative about it might really be an inner struggle with someone that's like, I know I should want this blessing, as we call children, but they're also seeing it more as a burden, and they're considering all the things that they will have to, maybe even, girl nights, or you going out with the girls and just having wild evenings that don't incorporate having to find a sitter, or don't call for a sitter or whatever. Just again, it's just like this freedom. I mean, it's a little bit darker than that with these cards, but it's still, I have to say that like somebody's really thoughtful about either questioning whether they should have gone through with, their pregnancy, or just maybe looking over how things have unfolded so far, considering how life would be different at this point if they hadn't, and or literally faced with the choice in the present moment, like yay or nay. And they would, in some cases, some might be willing to make the sacrifice to secure their independence. Maybe that's, what they value more at this time. And to that, to each his own. Like, you can't feel condemned by any human judge about that, because everybody has their own timeline of creation, and especially in such a specific way. And like I said, in some cases it might be better to not move forward at all than to move ahead begrudgingly and reluctantly, and take that energy out on an innocent life. So there's that. But I'm getting a sense that somebody no longer has the luxury of consideration anymore, especially not when we're actively in the spirit of Mother's Day. So it's really giving like someone trying, like almost trying to conjure up a way to relieve themselves, but it's a very unconventional way, if I'm being honest, with the Three of Swords. This Ouija board is what's throwing me all the way off. And what her shirt says, sweet something. I don't know what that smaller word is. If it's a word or it's just some type of, I don't know. Let me get one more. I'm shutting this down because, with the Fool card, let me just look at these since I'm only taking one more anyway. Let me look at these. We got the Hierophant, the Fool, the Lady of Coins, and the Temperance. There's a little girl again. She's a little older now than in the Four of Wands. There's the Balance, the Hierophant, and the Fool. But look at the Fool, though. Like, she's off on some adventure somewhere. Yeah. But you know what it's giving? It's like, I mean, if by chance, energetically, this message is, in the ethers touches someone's spirit, it's like, for all that you might feel you sacrifice for your own personal satisfaction, there's also a consideration to be made for what you could give life to, though. You got the Hierophant here. That's a very powerful person. We got the Temperance here. Like somebody, you have the opportunity to really bring balance into the world in human form. Like, you never know the frequency of vitality that you bring into the world through your seed. You just never know that what type of light is being birthed through you. So there is the consideration to be made for how ready you are, or how committed or devoted you could be to such a big job for the long haul. But the potential in gratification and the pride and the privilege of seeing someone grow into their fullest potential, just simply on account, well, not exclusively, but largely due to your nurturing and your guidance and your covering and your care. That's definitely a gratifying experience, and it may not be immediately so, but that's why you have, because you could never, like, even with the best care and investment into your children, you can't dictate what they'll do with it. It's still their life to live. But that's why I was saying that you definitely just have to find the joys along the way. The things that you can have an influence on or have some control over, you find those joys where you can, and you cling to them, and hide them in your heart for moments that that may later come and propose a different challenge or a greater challenge, i.e. the teenage years, which I'm already praying, like, Lord, please make me equipped for that. Because, you look at these teenagers now and it's like, oh my God, how do they do it? How do you get through that time? But let me get one more. it has its rewards, not just in the long run, but it can be rewarding along the way too. I can say that first as with firsthand experience. The King of Wands, interesting. And of course, here come the dad all late. I don't know if it's the dad, but you know what I'm saying. You know how it is. You be home with the baby all day. They come home, toss them up in the air a couple times, and they gone. That's the energy of the King of Wands. No, I'm joking. Actually, that could be quite an active dad, you know, with that being wand energy. Um, Somebody that's really passionate about sharing the responsibility and pulling their weight and doing their part and being adaptive. Is that the right word? Adaptive? Adaptable, maybe is the word, to this new way of life or whatever. But like I said, that's if, I mean, you could read the King of Wands either way, like in the joking way that I said before, or the other one. But here's the thing, you don't really know what you got until it's all said and done, because who someone is before a child doesn't absolutely mean that's who they're going to be as a dad. And I can definitely speak to that firsthand experience as well. Um, well, I mean, there are some indications, but it still comes down to seeing them in action, you know, when it matters most. And some will step up to the challenge and, you know, wear that passion of fatherhood on their sleeve and actually be of support and be a help and an asset to that dynamic. And some may not know how, because they never had a point of reference, or they just might not be so invested. But either way, you wouldn't know what they say, mama's baby, daddy's maybe. Nothing, no truer words have been spoken, because that's what it comes down to. And you can throw that in the pot with the list of all the other things I said. You kind of have to take in stride when you become a mom, because it really doesn't matter if you have a great partner or a good support system, or a loving husband, a devoted dad or not, or an extended village or not. Like, when it all is said and done, the care of that child still rests on your shoulders. And it's only an added bonus if you do have all of those things in place, and it adds value to your support. But whether you do and whether you don't, because you could have all that and still be stressed psychologically or energetically. As a matter of fact, absolutely energetically and physically, even when you do have support. So it just still comes down to how can you find the joy in who you are, your brand of motherhood, and what you do, and in the gift that you have. Like, how do you perceive it? Because again, that Eight of Swords is a matter of the mind. If you feel like a prisoner in your own life, in your own home even, then it really comes down to how are you going to free yourself. If you look at motherhood as some type of life sentence, if you have the opportunity to prevent it, then you absolutely should. And if you're faced with the choice of what to do in the most immediate future for the unforeseen one, then do so wisely and boldly, without any guilt or shame. You know, I'm not encouraging anything in particular, but I do speak liberally about that, because I've had my own experience of being faced with a choice too far more in advance than what I was ready to really weigh out, you know. And at the end of the day, it was nobody's responsibility but my own. There's nobody I could blame. There's nobody I would blame, you know? And it took a lot of time to heal from being faced with such a choice, even though I felt quite grounded and certain at that time. But the implications that have, well, the effects that run in the undercurrent of the psyche for certain choices that you make um, in the short run are, um, sometimes are, you have no way of knowing like how deep they will be effective or how long they would run. And sometimes even when you think you've healed or you've gotten over it or it didn't bother you at all, you find out that some of the things that have been created in your life may be a direct effect of that very choice, of that very point in time, of how you see yourself, how you choose partners, or how you live life from that point on. So I'm saying that to say is that I can, it's a lot of personal experience that I can speak from on both sides of the coin. So that in that case, I would never condemn anyone for making the most wise choice they can possibly make for themselves at the time to save a life, perhaps. um, and even their own, for the future. However, there's the other side of that, which again is you just never know what you're being tasked to bring into the world. You never know. And regardless of how that gets to be, whatever cards you're dealt, um, once you consent, and agree, you just still just you still get to not even have to, but you for your even for your own personal reward get to stay devoted to that in the most divine way. Don't take it lightly or for granted the gift of motherhood that you've been trusted with, because for all its challenges and stresses and overwhelms at times, it really, really is a privilege and a divine gift. It really is. And maybe some folks need to be reminded of that gladly took on the challenge with no deep consideration whatsoever, you know, and it still is a little bit hard at times, a little bit all consuming. Just, if there's any, I never do support like people hold like it what's the right word, like using someone else's life experience or example to make them feel better, like, well, at least that ain't me. But in this case, I fully condone it. Like, if this is not you, per se, where you are really feeling stuck and bound and overworked and underpaid, missing some old version of yourself, like if that's really really the least of your worries, yeah, sure, maybe you might be trying to find a little bit more extra time for yourself, or maybe a little bit more extra funds to pamper yourself or whatever. But you don't feel like your life is you know is no longer yours for holistically. Then you are a happy mother indeed. Is about as happy as can be expected to be, even with the stresses that come along with the gig. It's like you got to take the good with the challenging. And and even where you do feel challenged, I feel like it's important to realistically still give yourself more credit, especially if this is not you, because I feel like this is kind of left field of a mom that I would most relate to holistically. But I can understand as well too. So I think the point is to kind of like count your blessings, to really find a point of reflection and recollection of really, not recollect, well, I guess maybe recollection, but more so reverence for the good ways that your life has changed, and maybe the great ways that you have evolved as a woman, pure and simple, on account of motherhood. And that is something that I will never stop being thankful for, because my son completely transformed me from the inside out, for sure. who I who I felt charged to be a effective and efficient mom. I'm grateful for who I continue to be challenged to be. I'm grateful for who I feel affirmed to be when I look at his little face. I'm grateful for. So it's like, if you can find those points of gratitude, that's the force fuel that will encourage you and keep you going, not just to, again, wake up another day, but to really enjoy the privilege that you truly do have. Yeah, yeah, yep. And I really do feel like to be able to enjoy it really is a reward. It really is. All right, so let's see what's under here. Chariot. Okay, where's she going? With the 9 of coins. Okay, yeah, that's a success. And that's the independence. It's like you'll find your balance again if you already haven't. You every mom, especially new moms, I mean, I can definitely speak to that, but I can imagine there are different seasons of motherhood where you might sometimes lose your identity, either distant or disconnected from who you used to be before motherhood. That's one. But also who you are now as a mom, and how your priorities and your ideals and your outlook on life changes so drastically. And then at the different stages and phases of child rearing. And then again, I'm sure once you become like an empty nester or something like that, where motherhood is not doesn't necessarily define you holistically anymore. It might be an aspect of your identity, but it's not the only thing that you are. And really figuring that out in the midst of it, early on as possible, is more productive than anything, prosperous. Like when you can put yourself in a position to still honor your personal identity, as I said, like still finding the time to satisfy yourself, to take care of you, not, having to do so reactively because you feel guilty doing so proactively, or coming to the point where you have no choice but to take care of you because you're breaking down from the inside out and the outside in. It's like, if you can find your way to the liberation, the independence of still maintaining, your identity as what am I trying to say? Like, as a new iteration of your true self, motherhood being a part of that, then you'll be much better off for it. I feel like traditionally and culturally, most times, I mean, universally, let's just make it plain, a lot of times we are programmed to feel like once you become a mom, that's all you should That's all that should matter to you. You shouldn't, like that consumes every bit of who you are, and you shouldn't even desire to want to express anything else or to do anything else. But we know that's just not true. Like we know that, but sometimes it's hard to really activate that knowing, in a way that is healthy and healing, and again productive for everybody. So I guess the takeaway is, again, if you are in the thick of motherhood, and there is no sign of release, hopefully. And most likely you wouldn't really want one anyway, or you're not necessarily counting down the days to 18 as if that's some end of the road anyway, you know what I mean? Some finish line. Then you still like release yourself from the guilt and the condemnation from conditioning, even the comparisons, as I jokingly said, at least this ain't you, but even the comparisons to the best and the worst examples that may be in your midst. Just do you. Just do you. Most times, like especially when you have the brightest intentions, your brand of whatever you do is going to be is going to be effective. And usually it's not only effective, but when you do it your way, it most times can be inspiring. So I might even be talking to some unconventional moms out here that may have a bit of an inner conflict about their values of motherhood and familyhood and all of that good stuff being quite different than how they grew up or how society impresses upon them. Release yourself from that pressure. If it works for you, because that could be the Eight of Swords too, like overly thoughtful about how it should be done, or if you're doing it right, which is the mother's plight for sure. If you're doing it right, what raw, natural, unconventional aspects of yourself are you expected to somehow abandon because now you're a mom? Maybe none, maybe some, but I don't know. That's up to you. And it really is a matter of your personal choice, which could be the King of Wands here, like really taking full accountability and control of what you create in the legacy that you're leading and living, and even the one that you're leaving behind. So relieve yourself of the pressure, relieve yourself of the unnecessary struggle and overwhelm, most of which again we put on ourselves or we make agreement with from pressures outside of ourselves. Relieve yourself of the comparisons, even to your own mother, because most of the times there is no comparison, really and truly. There are some things that, if you're lucky, you willingly want to carry on or continue in your legacy, and it's okay if there are some things that you wish to discontinue or completely or to completely disconnect from, so it's not recycled. In the unconventional ways that you may practice motherhood or proceed in your best efforts might become the conventional, little do you know. I think I was trying to get to that, with the inspiring aspect, that the way you do momming might have been a cause for scrutiny and condemnation on one timeline, in one season, in one regard, but who knows, you might be pioneering a way that just was never really thought of before, or there wasn't a lot of courage to try, or there wasn't a lot of nerve to assert, again with the King of Wands, that boldness and that courage that is the trailblazing energy that is not something that can be compared to anything that you could have a point of reference for. So I guess, like, you never really know how these little buggers are going to turn out until it's all said and done. But the best and, the most and the least that you can do is give it your best shot as your best self. And if that means constantly devoting yourself to evolving that best more and more, it can only add value to the legacy that you're leading, and that be where the buck stops, because you can't really control how that legacy that you're leading gets picked up and carried on. But what you have a responsibility, what you have control in creating as we speak, especially in these delicate moments and seasons, stages of momming, So if you feel contented with with your strategies and your methods, however mad they may seem on the outside looking in, my best advice is just to trust, that inclination and align with the divine, so that if by God there is a need to pivot or transition your ideals or your methods in some way, shape, or form, you'll be so enlightened to do so before it's too late and too much damage is done. But in that same vein, trust that whatever you feel affirmed to, however you feel affirmed to carry on, is the righteous way. It's your way, and hopefully the indicators of success you're literally the fruit of your loins will affirm that truth. I hope so, for sure. In the meantime, find the little smiles and hide them in your pocket and enjoy the little moments, because we know they do fly by so fast. I can't believe my son is already 10, and it feels like yesterday that I was just carrying him around on my hip. And for all that it's worth, I wouldn't change not one decision I've ever made before him, and certainly not after him. He's been my greatest gift to date. And I'm so grateful to be his mom. I wear the name Jonathan's mom with pride. All right, so anyway, I'm going to leave that there. Thank you for listening and watching. Again, enjoy your weekend, enjoy your Mother's Day, and honor yourself and get some rest, hopefully, if you can. And yeah, back to business as usual on Monday, and I'll probably see you there. All right. So until next time, as always, I'll leave you with peace.